everybody. We continue interviewing the famous furriers. This time we have one of the famous of chinchilla industry, man who sold millions and millions of skins. The company has about 100 years of history. Today our guest, president of Canchilla, Brent Poley. Last time we met in Milano, we did have no time to record the interview, but now it's good that we have the opportunity to record something in Lviv. So you are second time here in Lviv in Ukraine. What's your impression about Ukraine?
Oh, it's excellent. I think last time I was here was 2015, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And no, I mean, I've seen a lot of improvements, both in the architecture and cleanliness of the city, you know, how much you've renewed the city. I never had a chance to sit behind or see the beautiful opera house we have behind us in the background. You know, that's from a city point of view.
Yeah, previous time we most of the time running
fast, fast visits. From the business or the chinchilla side of things, I mean, a big improvement as well. You've completed your dressing process or the dressing factory. I mean, that was just beginning at that time. The quality of skins that I saw are much improved from, you know, even 3-4 years ago, and much improved from 8-10 years ago when we first met and know each other, right? So yeah, no, excellent impression. I had good faith in the people of Ukraine and yourselves, your family. That's, you know, that's the reason we've always stayed in contact. I knew you guys would grow.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, thanks. Since our first meeting, changes a lot in the global fur market. And what is the main trend now in the global fur market, especially in about chinchilla fur, and what is the now facing the industry?
I mean, a lot of challenges facing the industry just because of the change in global culture. Not so much global culture as global economics, you know, the trade disputes that the world is starting to have, things like that. That's more from a global scale. From a chinchilla scale or a fur scale, you could say, or fur side of things, it's really the movement to the east of Europe, the countries like the Ukraine. For the last, say, 10 years, it's been China, Russia, China, Russia, China, Russia. Now, not that they're not still very big players, but the growth that we see is not from Europe, not from America. It's in the east part of Europe, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Lithuania, and especially here in Ukraine.
So the main reason is the cost, or what else?
No, I mean, that's both sides. That's a good question. It's both sides. From the furrier side, that's where they're finding their new customer, whether it's the oil wealth in any of the stand countries, right, that they've gone. So that's the new customer for the furrier himself. Now, from a farmer side, absolutely, what you said is true. Costs. Costs are much more realistic, or not realistic, just more reasonable, I guess is the word I'm looking for, in the eastern part of Europe. Now we see both chinchilla farms starting, many here, even mink farms from West European countries moving here to East European countries because of exactly what you said, the cost.
Our meeting is also about the news in auction sales. What is new in chinchilla auction sales this year?
Well, I believe exciting news. There has traditionally been 2 large auction houses in North America, NAFA, North American Fur Auctions, and American Legend. American Legend had the label Black Llama. Black Llama all over the world is by far the most well-known and highest reputation of quality mink. They've done promotion from, you know, Ray Charles to Cher to Naomi Campbell, Cindy Crawford. Every year they have, you know, very famous people, you know, promoting the Black Llama brand, right? It's become world famous all over the world. There's been an amalgamation. American Legend has fallen by the wayside, and North American Fur Auctions has become the preeminent and dominant auction house in North America. They're the oldest auction house in the world. They're by far the most diverse. By that I mean they have more offerings of different kinds of fur than any other auction house in the world. And they have recently been asked and questioned about chinchilla. And they most recently have agreed to work with us with chinchillas. So the new news is that NAFA...
It's the first time that they showing the chinchilla?
Many years ago, they did try in the late 1970s, early 80s, but the times just weren't right. The staff that they had working there just wasn't right. I mean, so this is something new in the modern era, you could say. Right?
So now NAFA will have all the options in the for.
Correct. Yeah. As I was saying there before, they handle mink, fox, all kinds of wild furs, and now chinchilla.
Nobody has it like it.
Correct. There are 3 main auction houses in the world. They're one of the biggest, if not the most, definitely the oldest, definitely most diverse. You know, they mink, fox, wild furs, which would include or entail stone marten, lynx cat, bobcat, lynx, beaver, raccoon, muskrat, you know, any kind of animal that you can think of. And then now, to round out the entire collection, chinchilla.
So with this big changes, what is new for the farmers?
It's a big opportunity. NAFA, North American Fur Auctions, will become a one-stop shop for all kinds of fur. That for the farmer, that creates one opportunity. For the furrier, it creates another. For the furrier, obviously, as I just said, it becomes a one-stop shop. They don't have to go to all auctions if they don't choose to or have the time to. And in the busy world that we live in, a lot of people don't have the time to attend each and every auction. With NAFA now carrying chinchilla, they've got the complete breadth or width of all the furs available that anybody could possibly need, right? Even giving them opportunity to get into different kinds of furs, like wild furs, as an example. So traditionally, and especially the east of the world, you know, east part of Europe, mink's always been big, sure. Chinchilla's been well known, sable's been well known, but wild fur not so much so, right? But with great interest from many people from this part of the world. From the farmer, it's an unprecedented level of opportunity for the buyers. There are 5,000 plus customers in a database for NAFA. They have 500-600 minimum buyers attend every auction, and that gives opportunity, right? There's 500-600 people in the room at one moment bidding on, talking about, looking at chinchilla. That's something that chinchillas rarely had in its past, right? There's been a lot of private dealers, even like my family in the past, but we can only be in one place at one time. Very difficult to get 500 people from all over the world in a single room together. Now we have that opportunity, and yeah, I see it as a great opportunity for the growth of chinchilla, for even the levels that we could achieve, right? Because in the past, I buy a skin, I set the price. I'm not really getting the chance to have 5 people bidding on it to get the price higher, which would benefit the farmer. Now we have that opportunity.
How it will look in practice for the farmer to work with the NAFA?
Should be very easy, and it actually opens up an opportunity for farmers all over the world. There are different regions of the world, of course, right? The Americas, Europe, Eurasia, the east part of Europe, and there will be collection spots in each one of those continents, and or not necessarily every country, but definitely regions and locations. They will be able to deal directly with someone that speaks their language, that understands their concerns.
And their market inside. And
correct, and the inside the market, and then we can all come together meaning the world chinchilla can come together to offer to the market the best possible goods, right? The best possible collection. Because the more of it we can bring together in one spot, meaning chinchilla, the better assortment we'll have, the better matching that will be able to be done for the furrier. You know, where they're available now, they can have this quality or they can have that quality, but they can't have all qualities at one spot at one time.
You collecting chinchilla from different parts of the world. What is special in different countries or different areas in the chinchilla breeding and chinchilla collecting and chinchilla food?
Sure. Every part of the world has their strengths, you know. In commodities, oil as example, it's Saudi Arabia and the Middle East that is strong in oil. When it comes to chinchilla breeding and specifically, there's a large contingent in South America. I'd say that is where you find the largest ranches. A larger size of animal, as an example, will go along with that. In Europe, East Europe, Central Europe, there's not a lot in Central Europe, but the eastern part of Europe, it would be a contrast of color, maybe you could call it a darkness. The quality of fur is something that's really quite international. Either you're a good farmer or you're not. And the good farmer has the good quality of fur. Now, there's a good farmer and a bad farmer in every country and in every region, right? But to be specific as possible, I would go with size of an animal would be the strength of the Latin Americans or the South Americans. The contrast of color or darkness would be the strength of the Europeans. And the quality of fur is depending upon the farmers. The better quality farmer in every region has the better quality of fur. The weaker farmer, not so much so.
Yeah, but for example, we have a type like called Danish chinchilla, Danish type of chinchilla, and Latin type of chinchilla. Is it correct, or do they have a difference?
Sure. I mean, the difference in that is it gets down to genetical breakups. A Costina type and a Bravicadata type. Okay, those are the two original wild animals in the wilds. The European, say Danish type, as you mentioned, is more of the Costina type, a smaller animal, a darker animal. That's where the Latins, or South Americans, you could say, have kind of taken that idea and added something to it because they've mixed in the Bravicadata, which comes from Argentina and Chile, right, natively. What they've done there is thus being able to get the animal to be bigger, right? That bigger size, I mean, helps in a lot of things. A bigger animal can produce more milk as a female to carry more babies. Example one. From a furrier side, the bigger skin that you can make, the less skins it needs to make a collar and trim. Right, so the furrier likes that kind of a size issue. Where you're always asking me to tell you a cute story. I got one from a Polish lady that many years ago. So at least here you would understand some of the words. I'm always asking for larger, duja. And as I was buying her skins, all the time I was saying mawa, small. You could see her getting angry and you know, stern and upset. And at the end, I said, you know, I hope you're happy. Nice to see you again. You know, why the face? I do not have mawa. Maybe Shrednia, but not mawa. So you know,
but you have something to compare. So always.
That's right. And you know, I think every product in the world, whether it's technology or our chinchillas or breeding, you're always looking to improve the stock, improve. Even mink, as an example, the largest part of our industry. They never really boomed in the industry until they improved their baby production. When I was a kid, more your age, you know, mink had 3.5 babies per year. That was it. Now they're up to 5 and 6. And that growth in the production of babies is really what made them profitable, right? That's something we need to work on with chinchillas because, you know, we're at 3 and change. Size of the animal, as I was speaking before, it's very similar even within mink. I mean, mink used to be 0 size was the biggest, and that was it, right? 2, 3, 4, 2, 1, 0 being the largest. Well, now they're up to 000, quadruple, 40, 50. Foxes are into 6 zeros, right? So they've improved themselves in size, and so have we, or need to continue doing, right? With the chinchillas.
Canada is also famous about the wild fur. All over the history. What's also about the wild fur of Canada?
I'd have to include North America there, which is Canada and the United States, because the Americans, they get very pissy about that kind of stuff, right? If you don't include them, because they are the biggest and the best in everything, of course. We're a bigger country, so that's what we have, right? They have a bigger population. And anyways, yeah, well, we are the region of wild fur. I mean, the region or part of the world of wild furs, Canada and north of the United States. You know, there's really not a lot of wild fur in the very southern states where it's very hot. It's in the northern states where our climates are similar, where it's cold. I had mentioned before when we were talking slightly about the auction that's one of NAFA's, or North American Fur Auction's, greatest strengths, is the broad diversity of products that they offer. It's not just mink. Like some auction houses are predominantly mink. Another auction house is predominantly fox. Right? NAFA has it all. They have mink, fox, and wild furs, which is what you just mentioned. Wild furs has a very broad range in and of itself. You know, from a squirrel to a muskrat, which are very small animals, to a beaver, or which is a larger animal. Then we get into raccoon, a little larger again. Then we get into a marten / sable. Canadian sable is called the stone marten. That's become very popular now, obviously in your countries because of sable that comes from Russia, right? So it's a comparison of. I still give the nod to the Russian sable. It's the best fur in the world. And on top of that, now we get into the cat families. There's the lynx, there's a lynx cat, there's a bobcat, a little more southern or mid-range of America, not quite as dense and puffy and fluffy a fur, if you want to. That's a kind of a vague term, fluffy. Some of my friends in the industry would be like, fluffy, come on. That's not a real word. But it's true. Right? They just have a longer fur. And in the cycles of fashion, you see it even from the big boys in our industry, which are mink and fox. Sometimes mink is more popular because it's a shorter fur. Sometimes fox is more popular because it's a long-haired fur. So in trims, you see it on a lot of parkas or overcoats that ladies wear all around the world. They like that big puffy piece of fur on the edge of their hood. Yep. Right? A mink doesn't fit that part. You know what I mean? It fits. Obviously, they can make it fit, but it doesn't stand out and show well and that kind of thing. Mink is suited more towards the garment, because it's even, and now things can be more uniform and match together better and just look better from a fashion point of view. So those two constantly change via the demand of the lady on the street and the fashion houses that create the fashion for the lady on the street. So with wild fur, it just gives the furrier, the designers, the stylists, the fashion houses, much more choice and opportunity. And that's where I believe NAFA has the strength. Within the industry, as I mentioned before, they are mink, fox, wild fur, now chinchilla. They have got the complete assortment of all furs that exist on the planet. And they're the only auction house that can do that and or say that.
I heard something about fur mark. What you can say about fur mark? Something new.
Yeah, sure. Fur mark is fashioned after. Fashion is a design thing. It's in a way a copy of wool mark. So every piece of wool or sheep, whether it's double face or whatever, is that's produced in the world, falls under a label, which is like a brand, a trade name, wool mark. So every piece of wool in the world is quality wool in the world is under wool mark. Well, the IFF, International Fur Federation, has created fur mark in more or less not a copy, because we're a slightly different product and we have to be slightly different, but at least the idea of it is traceability and responsibility. Okay, now what I mean by that, responsibility, as an example, responsibility under an environmental type of a scenario. Okay, as an example, chrome that was used in my grandmother's time, your great grandmother's time, but that's from 50, 60 years ago. It's in the past, right? There's new kinds of technology for dressings. More responsible. You cannot pollute the water when we're doing it. It's because we need to be responsible to our clients and end users.
It's like I said, that now you cannot sell the good fur if you're using those chemicals. It's impossible.
Literally impossible. I mean, in most countries in the world, really all countries in the world now, even China, pollution has become such a big issue. You've seen probably pictures on the news of Beijing, and the skies are just clouded with smoke. It's not fog or clouds, it's smoke, right? It's pollution. So even they want to clean it up. In countries of Europe and North America, it's been that way for 20, 25 years, right? If you tried to use products such as chrome, there's no way you could sell it to the people, right? So that's one way in which we've cleaned up our act, if you want to say. A big part of responsibility now, or even environmental responsibility, is the comparison between a fake fur and a natural fur. Right, a fake fur, which many designers have played with, toyed with, tried, and they're learning now that the natural fur is actually more responsible. Fake fur comes from plastic. It's a petrochemical-based
Nobody knows what's going to be.
Well, they've even. They don't know for sure, but they're. Plastic bottle that we drink, that's glass. So see, we're environmentally friendly even here in this interview. But plastic can last for 1,000 years in a landfill. It's being chewed up and thrown into the ocean, and fish are eating these plastics and now coming back into our food system. Sometimes they catch fish from the sea and they open them up and they find little bits of plastic inside. So the plastics industry is having to change itself, but that is where, or will be forced to over time for sure, but that's where we have already become more responsible environmentally. Fake fur is plastic. Plastic does not biodegrade. It stays in the earth for 1,000 years, and we don't know what will happen in 1,000 years to that plastic, really. How could we know? Whereas natural fur is biodegradable. You put it in the ground, and in 6 or 7 years, Mother Nature takes back what was once hers to begin with, right? The other side of natural fur is you can reuse it for generation to generation. Your grandma used to have an old style mink coat. Now your wife or your daughter can redesign that coat and use it again for another generation. Literally, fur can last for 3, 4, 5 generations as long as there is a creative mind to redesign to the next generation.
So you mean the fur mark will be on a each fur coat that you can see all the steps of those?
Correct, yeah. That's the traceability part that I mentioned before. I was really last part talking more about the responsibility or the environmental parts of our business and how we've had to change our business to become more ecologically responsible. Traceability part of it is exactly what you mentioned. In the very near future, I mean, it's already happening in Russia with tags that the chipping, exactly. Now this will be more of a tag than a chip, but it will be able to track, for instance, a mink garment as an example. If you bought a mink garment here in the Ukraine, we're in Ukraine, so let's talk about that. You would be able to, by scanning that barcode or chip or whatever they're going to use, you'll be able to see what farmer raised it and know that that farmer is a responsible farmer. Then you're going to be able to know which dressing company dressed it to make it into a leather to be used. And they're, to be able to meet this program, they're going to have to be tested every year to ensure that they not are only today, but next year and the following year and the following year. The farms will have to be inspected by veterinarians and a third-party group to say that, yes, they're still ecologically responsible and they treat the animals humanely and they have a good living condition and they're very clean. So you're going to be able to track from the farmer to the dresser to the company or designer that made it and finally to the store that you're going to buy it in. So the consumer will be able to see each and every step of where that fur came from, not just maybe here, maybe there, right?
From your point of view, how do you feel in the investing area of Ukraine? Like as a Canadian, what you can say about it?
Okay, you asked me two questions there in a way. One is a Canadian and one is a personal point of view. Okay, I'm going to answer first the Canadian part. Okay, before I left to come over here, many of my friends are, so where are you going this time? Because I've traveled all over the world frequently, right? I'm going to the Ukraine. What? Really? You know, everybody kind of backs up a little bit, and because of course the not political, but the strife you have in the East, right? As a personal point of view, now that I've been here a couple of times and I see Lviv, you know, personally, yeah, I would recommend to most anyone to think about seriously investing in the country. I would, you know, be honest and not invite them to invest in the Far East part, because there's so much unsettlement there with the you know, political strife problems that you've got, Crimea and that part of your country. But this part of your country, you can't tell that there's even any skirmishes going on. I mean, this feels more like Western Europe than it does anything else. It really feels like Western Europe. So from a Canadian point of view and what we hear in our news, you know, like I said, my friends were Ukraine, really, right? For me personally, now that I'm here and see the opportunity that exists with the excellent infrastructure, right? Good roads. I mean, some of the most fertile looking land I've seen in a long time. Also from that, the reasonable cost structure, the well-educated people, many who speak excellent English and or German and or, you know, many languages. Yeah, I can't see a better place to invest on the planet right now than the Ukraine and or, you know, quite possibly some other ex-Soviet countries, East European countries, right? They've got a European flavor, history, and culture that really, if you drop someone in Lviv or in Krakow, Poland, you'd have a hard time to tell the difference until somebody spoke the language. And even then, as a Canadian, I have a hard time figuring out who's Ukrainian and who's Polish just from your talk, because you use so many frequent words, you know, dobra, good in both countries, you know, tak, same in both countries, right? So no, I would highly recommend. I see a lot of opportunity here.
Let's talk about the years of the best years in fur industry that you remember, and what was the worst time for the fur business?
We talking fur business in general, or more about chinchilla?
More about chinchilla.
More about chinchilla. Fair enough. We're both in the chinchilla business, so I assume that was the question.
But even if it's the chinchilla, it's
Well,
same
we're
or
part
similar?
of, okay, fair enough. We're part of the fur industry.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
that, you know, what's good or bad for chinchilla is generally good or bad for everything else as well. Best times, especially for chinchilla. I would say late 1980s up until 1997. The reason I say that is 1987 was Black Monday in the stock market crash, October 29th, 1987. So that was the second biggest drop except for the crash in 1929. So that was a tough period. But once that got cleaned up and through, so 88, 89, till up until 1997, because 1998 was the Russian ruble crash. So those were the best years of the fur business and the chinchilla business because the whole world was involved. Korea and Japan were buying
Opening
chinchilla.
new markets.
You know, yeah, sure. Korea and Japan were mature markets at that time, but they were still buying heavily. America was still into the fur business. PETA hadn't come along so strongly yet. Europe was very strong in the fur business. And post 1989, so started Poland and Hungary and these countries as well. Even Russia, because the fall of the Iron Curtain was 89 to 91, right? And also China was opening at that time. So it was the one time in history when the old markets, Europe, America, Japan, Korea, and as well the new markets were open. Nowadays, really, we're living off of China and Russia for the most part. You could say those are the big two hitters in the world. As I mentioned earlier when we were in our discussion, that Ukraine and the east of Europe, I believe to be the new opportunity, both for the raising of furs and for the selling of furs. You can see behind us today, there's snow on the ground, right? So you've got the climate to use furs, right? Or to need furs, not use. Flat out need. They're the warmest thing on the planet. There's no question about it. The worst time, I mean, every market experiences an ebb and flow, we say in English, ebb and flow, and up and a down, right? That is the same in an oil market, right? You know, oil used to be 120. It crashed down to 60. It's slightly on its way back up now. So fur is very much similar to that kind of a market, right? We have good years, we have bad years, we have in-between years. You know, we're doing this. The worst that I can think of, at least off the top of my head, post 9/11. 9/11 is September 11th, 2001, when the World Trade Centers in New York City were attacked. At that time, it was a difficult global time, sure, because everybody thought it was World War III. For the next 2 weeks after that happened, oh my God, here we go, this is World War III, right? That never materialized, thank God. But it's ushered in a very difficult time economically, okay? It took out a big part of our client base, which was the Arab people. Rodeo Drive, pre-9/11, the biggest customer on Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills, California was not the Americans. It was the Saudis and the Kuwaitis and the Qataris, and it was rich Arabs coming over to buy in Beverly Hills, right? So once 9/11 happened, they weren't feeling comfortable coming back to America anymore, right? So that killed that part of business just in America. But that took them out of the industry, right? The global economy was afraid, and also by that time PETA and the animal rights movements had a foothold. You know, they had a stronger position in Europe and America, right? So the combination of all of those things, bad economic scenario, fear for the future of the world, and thus a little bit of oversupply.
So assumed for those situations.
Sure. I think that was, you know, everything was bad all at one time, right? At other times, for instance, 2007, 2008, just more recently, 10 years ago, that was a global crisis, right? With the stock markets falling dramatically, but still there was hope of people. Nobody thought the world was going to end tomorrow. You know, that the nuclear bombs were going to start flying like they did in 2001. So, you know, that was just it was not a good period, but there was lots of positives. China was buying huge, Russia was buying huge, manufacturers in Greece and Turkey and Europe and America were strong, the designers were strong, you know. So that wasn't a great period, but it was just a blip. 2001, I in my memory anyways, was probably the worst time.
About the top, now we have a question, so catch it. What was the best price you paid for the beauties?
The best skin.
The best skin, yeah.
Standard quality, 100 US, black velvet, 120 US dollars. And not just for one or two. for quite a few. Yeah, I mean, it used to be that when we would pay that, we'd stop and take a picture with the farmer that had that, so that the farmer could promote, we could promote, right? Yeah, and there was a lot of pictures. It wasn't just one guy getting one skin. It was, any decent farmer was getting 5, 6, 8, 10 of them, right? So it was a solid price, not just a promotional price, if you want to say that, right?
We heard the news also about one of the fashion house, and the news of the project of 2019. You can say something about that?
I can say something. Something is that you're right. With the fashion houses being so important in the driving of the market, yes, there is a project in the works with a very large fashion brand. Unfortunately, we're still sitting in 2018 at this moment, and that's a 2019 project, as you said, and I could get myself in a little bit of trouble with too many groups if I spill the beans today. Maybe next time we meet, we can talk about that.
Okay, that's it. Okay. About Furmark, do you think that this program can help with the prices also in those industry and about the codes?
Sure. I mean, that's part of the reason why they're doing it. You know what I mean? To give more people more comfort when you're buying a fur, right? Through our periods of anti-animal usage and things like that, that makes some people uncomfortable about wearing fur. That's what this program Furmark is all about, so that we can show that we are responsibly sourced, that the farms that are raising it are checked every year by licensed veterinarians, that the dressing companies are checked every year by chemists, so that they're not using chemicals that's harmful to the environment. Fur manufacturers, that they're not using too cheap a labor so that it's like a sweatshop in Indonesia.
So everything is quality.
Right? Everything is quality all the way along the line. That should give, we hope will give, every lady or man, because men's garments are a big part of the industry now. Black guys in basketball in America, man, buy a lot of furs, right? So do football players, so do maybe hockey players. That's the one group that doesn't buy a lot of fur. But basketball players, baseball players, football players, both soccer and American football, right? So men's is a big part of the industry as well. I mean, it's only 20-25%, women still 75-80%, but it will give any person on the planet comfort that what they're wearing is ethically sourced, right? Meaning, as I just stated, everybody's doing the right thing and the right way, this kind of thing. So to answer that question specifically, yes, I believe it can do nothing but help, because now we can prove, not just say we're good guys, they're bad guys. We literally have proof to back up where it was made, they've been checked. Where it was produced, they've been checked. Where it was, made into a garment, they've been checked. Right, so we have a not a police, but a third-party independent system to check every level of the product, and that can do nothing but give everybody confidence that's, they're buying an ethically sourced product.
About your way, how did you start it? How did you step in for business? You remember it?
Oh yeah, I remember. It's really a family business. I mean, I am third generation fur involved, we could say. I'm second generation in this particular aspect of business, being a fur broker. My father started in 1954, so we are 60 plus years, 64 years. We have a family joke, we're older than McDonald's, right? Because they started in 58 or 59. Now my grandfather was a trapper. My father was a hunter. I've done both. So in Canada, really, you grow up with that stuff. I mean, it's just part of our culture, especially if you don't live in the big city, right? Which I grew up in the countryside. And so fur and or trapping and or, this industry has been in my blood since as long as I can possibly remember. My grandfather talked about it. My father got involved in it, first as a chinchilla farmer, right? From a business aspect, and then finally into a chinchilla broker, or buying and selling of the skins. Now myself, I don't know if you care to know all of this part, but 1986, I was to graduate university with a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration and a secondary degree in psychology. I wanted to be a lawyer as a kid. I'm good at the BS, so I figured, okay, I'll be probably pretty good as a lawyer, right? Anyways, my mom had a heart attack. I had to come home and help the family business, and I never went back. Pretty much that's it. But I realized that this gave me as a young man a lot more opportunity than going back to law school and waiting 10 years until I became a respectable lawyer, blah, blah, blah. At 24, 25, I was traveling the world, you know, all over the world. I mean, 3-4 world tours a year. I was in the east of Europe within 6 months of the Berlin Wall coming down. I mean, first trips into Poland were, you know, no hotels. I don't know what, Gesthofs, they would call them, a German style, with one bathroom for 10 rooms, you know. Then I would say, no, I got to have my own bathroom, right? And then they got me my own bathroom, but no hot water. Okay, I got to have hot water, I need a shower. Then it got to the point where as long as the hotel has CNN, okay, I'll stay there, right? Just a cute little story, right? But yeah, so that's really how I got involved, was through the family. A lot of my friends ask me, how'd you learn all this stuff? I can't answer that question because it was just something I learned growing up. It's not like I went to school to learn about chinchillas, how to breed chinchillas, how to grade chinchillas. I was 5 years old chasing little chinchillas around.
Beside
it was always in the family, always right beside me. It was like my little brother. You know, I only had sisters, so my little brother were the chinchillas.
I remember you told me the story about that you put in some advertising in post, you know, like a postcards and a brochure about the chinchillas.
Yeah.
When you started it, yeah?
You know, imagine when I started, even in the 80s, there was no iPhones. There was, you know, just the beginning of internet, but only from a NASA point of view. Excuse me. You know, aerospace point of view. Everybody didn't have a smartphone. There was no Facebook. There was no, you know, Google. There was no Instagram, right? So we relied more on multi-level marketing, you could say, right? Any kind of marketing where you could get it out there. So whenever, for instance, I still play ice hockey in Canada, but I was a competitive ice hockey player when I was younger. So when we would travel to the next town over to play hockey, I would always take a brochure with me of about chinchillas, raise chinchillas to make money. And I'd stuff it in every mailbox we could see along the way. I used to get in trouble from my coach because I'd show up late to the game because I was stuffing mailboxes for my dad. Really? You know? So the coach was finding, you can stuff mailboxes after the game, not before the game. I want you here when the game starts, right? So yeah, I mean, we've done, I guess that's the benefit that I've had since it's been with me all my life. I've learned firsthand what worked, what didn't work. You know,
it was not information about chinchillas in that time.
Yeah, no. I mean, that was
nobody knows about that.
Not nobody, but very few. You know, at that time, when are we? 80s. Chinchillas only came to Europe in the 58, 60. So even in Europe in general, it was only the Germans that had chinchillas at that time, right? Even to the east of Europe, I would say. Yeah, about the same time I graduated university, Poland would have started to be going into Germany. I was in Poland in '89, but the first Polish I met was in Germany in Frankfurt, 82, 83, something like that. I think 82, if I remember correctly. So we've been working with the same company in Poland since 1982. You know what I mean? That's 36 years. I've been working with the same family in Argentina since 1964. My father with his father, now me with his son. So that's over 40 years, right? So we've prided ourselves on finding the right family, sticking with the people that because I mean, they become family in a way. Yeah. You know what I mean? 40 years of knowing that family, they're my brothers as much as they are my suppliers or my friends, right? To that degree, in my wedding, I had an Argentine stand with me, I had a Brazilian stand with me, I had a Canadian stand with me. You know, so it wasn't just my friends from home. They were all drinking at the bar. So, you know, even in my wedding, it was an international wedding, you could say, right?
That's what I'm asking about the way it's also about the farm. You have also in the history that you moved your farm, the ranch, from the North America to the South America. What was the time? What time it was?
Yeah, time. Now you're making me think. Late 80s, 88 or 89. I can't remember exactly which year. 88, 89, 90. Because we started discussions to do it, and then by the time you actually do it, that takes some time, right? Yes, correct. So when my father started, we started in Canada, right? 1954, as I said earlier. So we lasted 34, 35 years in Canada as a farmer, right? By that time, we were also, the leading company in marketing of chinchillas. The reason we moved was pure economics. I mean, cost of production, right? And in any business, every business is trying to reduce their cost of production. Whether you're making a scarf, a hat, or a chinchilla, any good businessman will look for advantage or opportunity where they can, right? And that is generally cost of production. So the same way that the American companies now make most of their stuff in China, we had to make a move to stay competitive in the marketplace. And that move was to Brazil. So the reason I chose Brazil was, well, infrastructure. To that degree, my partners there are three brothers, much like yourselves, right? All three are veterinarians. Again, similar to yourself, I know that you are. And that gave me a degree of security, right? That's, the worst thing that can happen to a live animal ranch is a sickness or an illness. And if you don't treat it fast enough, it can wipe you out. So having veterinarians on staff as part of my partners, that was a comfort feeling of the reason to move. The real reason was sure costs. In North America in the 80s, I can't remember exactly, but to raise a chinchilla was into the mid-20s, $25, $27, things like that, $25 to $30, let's say. When I first moved to Brazil, we could do it for $8, $9, $10, right? So that's big difference, right? It's a profit margin difference. So that's the reason that we did it, right? Size-wise, we still are today the largest farm in Latin America. We range, depending upon the market, good times, bad times, anywhere between 2,000 to 2,500 females. On the low range, maybe 1,800, something like that. So at a certain time of year, when we're running 2,500 females, we've got 10,000 animals on that ranch, right? Once you pelt them down, obviously you have less, right? And then they grow up again. And that exists to this very day, right? I think it helps me in so many ways. It helps my family in so many ways. Keep in touch with the farmer. Keep in touch with the mentality of the farmer. Too many of my competitors, they're just chinchilla dealers, you know what I mean? Or they're fur dealers, and chinchilla is a very small part of their business, right? For us, chinchilla is our life, is our business, right? So that I can stay in tune or in touch or in the mindset of a farmer, I think only helps me every day, It helps me in understanding the market better. It helps me in being able to educate my customers, right? So I know how to breed a chinchilla. I know how to kill a chinchilla. I know how to do it all. So when they're having problems, the new farmers, I can teach them, okay, you did this wrong, you did that wrong, you did this wrong. Because as a supplier, dealer, whatever you want to call us, it's important that I have good quality. Right? My customers don't want, oh no, I want the worst ones. No, nobody says that. Everybody says I want the best ones, right? Of course at the best price, but I want the best ones. So, it helps me teach the new farmers where to improve. It helps me understand the old farmers and what cycle they're going through. It just helps me be a better chinchilla guy, in China for so many years, and many people didn't know my name. I used to have a mustache, right? And the chinchilla guy, right? Even once I shaved it off, my wife didn't like it anymore. I was starting to get gray, so I shaved it off for a Christmas present for her one year, actually. And I went back to China the next year, and everybody's like, hey, whoa. Oh, I know you, oh, chinchilla guy. So, it's been a benefit for me, keeping the animals. I still love doing it. I still spend a couple weeks a year down there during breeding season. I like putting, small and dark with big female and seeing what we get. I love, grading them. I love touching the fur. I love all aspects of it, right? The dealing parts actually can be the tougher part sometimes, but that's showing me the world. That's giving me the world. Here I am sitting in Ukraine, right? If it wasn't for chinchillas, I don't know if I'd ever have come to Ukraine, right?
Time is changing and a lot of new technologies coming to the fur business also. Yesterday when we discussed this interview for today, I showed you the computer program system.
Yeah.
What you can say about those kind of things in the fur business.
Well, I'll say what I can say, but then I'm going to throw a question back at you. You've been asking all the questions, so now I'm going to ask one once I'm done. No, excellent. I mean, we've had programs in the past, but only from a tracking of the baby system. You know what I mean? So more or less just the breeding of the animal system and nothing. Correct. Nothing more advanced. What you were showing me yesterday was really what I saw was a complete system, both from the breeding and keeping track of your babies, you know, and when the female must be changed for a new one, these kinds of things, all the way through tracking your product, which is the skin, to is it in dressing, is it in sorting, is it ready to be sold, is it sold? That's something I see as completely new and very interesting to me. I mean, I must admit, I'm not a tech genius. I grew up when we had no cell phones, you know what I mean? I've learned to use my iPhone and my iPad, but I can't code, right? So that's where I'd throw it back to you. I mean, I think it's a great system, right? I think it's a great idea. It's what the modern chinchilla industry needs, you know, younger guys with a new mindset of how the world can work. My dad is now 91, right? Still kicking, still driving, you know, still strong. Forgets a few things, but you know, so do I. So I can't really say much about that. But so imagine I've seen a guy that's 91 live through his whole life in the chinchilla business or fur industry, and now I'm 55. You know what I mean? Had most of my adult life since I've been 20. You know what I mean, in the fur industry, but computers were only a small part of it. The way that you guys, much younger, much more tech savvy, are doing it, I think it's the way of the future, right? I mean, look at the most powerful / most profitable / most valued companies in the world. It's Facebook, Apple, Google, you know, and these are tech companies. It's no longer Ford, GM, Mercedes-Benz, and Audi, right? It's tech companies. So I guess that's where I throw it back to you. What tech are you doing that I don't even understand?
We try to do something similar like you said about fur mark. It's more for the farmer side. He can control, he or she can control all those steps from the beginning to the end, and control the quality, quantity, everything's the numbers, and corrects things to make it more to make it work better,
more efficient. Yes.
Yeah, and try to do this usable. I mean, to understand everybody.
Yeah.
The thing is that also the farmers need more information from the east part of Europe, because from North America has a lot of literature.
Well, to that end, you were talking to me yesterday also about a book that you've written and things like that. Tell me about that.
Yeah, we are preparing, almost done, the book with, we included the most important information from the North America, United States, from the South America, from some also part from Europe. It's the most important information, but only about the fur, not on other aspects like the breeding, only about the fur, because that's information farmers need. At first, I believe now, because first our book was about the veterinary things.
So this is your second book, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, and also thank you for giving some information also for this book.
Yeah, happy to do so.
We hope that we know that this information will improve and develop a lot of farmers with their words in that.
And make it easier for them, if I understand correctly, right?
Yeah.
You know, make it that's more profitable, more
not
enjoyable.
Spend too much, so they will have everything in one book. So they will spend not much years and years to learn it, to know exactly details of the work with the fur.
Well, I mean, as an example from our time, all we had was some old books to learn from. Now you've got fresh information from the whole world, if I understand correctly, right? And you've got information on the internet. When I first started, there was no internet to learn from, right? I had to learn from my dad and my father. Father, same thing. But I had to learn practically, right? Now, if I understand correctly, they can learn technologically, even in a way.
Yeah.
Right?
when we started chinchilla business, we understood and we felt that it builds on women's love to the fur. What you can say about it? Are you agree with me?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Oh, sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, it's part of the fashion industry, no question, right? Maybe even the high end of the fashion industry, but the touch and feel, you know, I mean, that's what creates that emotion I think you're talking about.
Yeah.
Right? They can see it in a newspaper. They can see it in a magazine. Yeah, I like it. Looks good. But once they touch it, they fall in love.
Yeah.
Right? And that's that emotion that I think you're talking about. And that emotion is what drives them to want one, demand it of their husbands, want to buy one for themselves. You know, it just depends upon their situation. But yeah, that
not
touch
even
and
industry.
feel.
If you touch and feel it,
Yeah.
you will love it.
It becomes a love of. I mean, that's very true for me. I can say that's very true for my wife because she's got like 7 or 8 different fur garments, you know. So yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. And there's something about the moment that they touch, the moment that they feel, and especially with chinchilla, right? It's the most dense fur in the world. It's the softest fur in the world. This is a trick I used to use all over the world, right? When people didn't know what chinchilla was. For instance, when I first went to China, they come and they see it and they say, "Ooh, so nice rabbit." No, not rabbit, chinchilla. What? Chinchilla. Chinchilla. Oh, okay. How much? $50. Whole bundle? No, one piece. Ooh, expensive, right? But I'd have them hold up the skin and you close your eye, ask them to close their eyes, right? Tell them, touch the fur and you tell me when you're touching the fur. And they would close their eyes and every person was into the fur before their hands even felt it, okay? Ferrari as an example. Ferrari, when a Ferrari has finished a car, they have a human hand go over the whole entire car because the most sensitive thing on the planet is a human touch. Not a computer, a human fingertip touch, right? And I think that's the same concept for women. Once they touch a fur, once they feel the softness of chinchilla, that's what we're talking about here, really. Yeah, it's orgasmic. It's you know, it's what drives that demand. It's what drives the love of fur.
Thank you for your time, and we're glad to see you in Ukraine.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your hospitality. Beautiful city. Love being here.
It's nice to hear.